Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Town Council's Policy and Finance Advisory Group. Meetings of the Town Council's committees have been temporarily replaced by advisory groups and will be conducted in accordance with the Town Council's agreed remote meetings protocol. This meeting is being streamed live and is available to view on our website. I'll now ask the Town Clerk to carry out a roll call of all councillors and ask you to confirm that you are present. Thank you.
You're live, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Present.
Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
Present.
Councillor Butcher.
Present.
Councillor Malloy, who's substituting for Councillor Chase.
Present.
Councillor Long.
Present.
And Councillor North East.
Yeah, present.
Thanks very much. So moving on with the agenda, first of all, members are asked to switch their mobile phones to silent for the duration of the meeting. We've already noted apologies from Councillor Chase and being substituted by Councillor Malloy, the Mayor. And item 3, next item is declarations of interest. Standing declarations are noted. Have members and officers any other declarations that they need to make now, or if not during the meeting? Are there any further declarations? Nope. Right, we then move to minutes. If you turn to pages 4 to 14 in your agenda, you'll find the minutes from the meeting on the 15th of March 2021. If everybody's happy with them, these minutes will be approved and arrangements made for them to be signed at a later date. Is everybody happy with these?
Yes, happy.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. I will sign those amongst the hundred of other things still to be signed over the last 18 months. Right, the next item is Chair's report and urgent items. I'll ask the Town Clerk if there are any urgent items. Peter, any urgent items?
There are none, Chair.
Thanks very much. Item 6 is public forum. In accordance with the remote meetings protocol, which has been introduced by this Town Council, any members of the public wishing to address the Council or any of its committees during remote meetings, run out of script, that suddenly disappeared, should have emailed their submission to us one clear day before the meeting. So I'll ask the Town Clerk, are there any questions?
No, Chair.
Thank you. We then move on to item 7, and if you please turn to page 15 of your agenda papers, and I'll hand over to the Town Clerk to start taking us through these reports.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The first one is a government circular, which is about flag flying. I do not propose, your members will be pleased to know, to go through the whole list of flag flying moments again, because we've done it several times. What the government are saying is for their own buildings, that they're going to fly the Union flag all the time, and with some minor amendments as set out in the paper. And in very simple terms, they are saying to local government they'd like them to do the same thing, but it really is up to each local authority or local council to make those decisions. So the question really, members, is do you wish to fly the Union flag at all times other than when we'd be flying another flag? And if so, would you like to recommend that to council?
Well, my view on this is very clear. We have a list of days when flags are flown because they are special occasions, and therefore people's attention are drawn to them, and it doesn't matter whether it's the Sovereign's birthday, Prince of Wales' birthday, anniversary of the coronation, etc., etc. They are special days and the flag is flown. If the flag is flown every day on our council, on the Town Council, people will just sort of say, oh, flag's flying. They won't realise that it's there for a significant anniversary in the life of our country. And I would personally prefer to stick to the current situation of putting up the Union flag on these special occasions and the other flags that we fly from time to time on their special days, so that actually it is a special occasion rather than just an everyday event that nobody will notice. That's my view. Over to committee members who wish to ask or speak on this. Who have I got? Councillor Long. Jill.
I thought Councillor North East was before me.
Oh, I haven't got his name on my list.
Well,
Let me change my list and see if it's different on that one.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we have Councillor North East first and then Councillor Long.
Fine, if you can tell me that. I haven't got that appearing on my screen at all. So, OK, Councillor North East first. Thank you. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Chairman. Don't know what's going on then if you haven't got that screen. We seem to all have it. I'll put it down to Teams again, and I'll say again, we should go to Zoom. Another reason. No, Chairman, I do take issue with you. I go to France a lot, and all their buildings fly the French flag every day. And I mean, you go to other countries in Europe, and they're proud of their flags. They fly them all the time. I think if we want to promote special occasions, we should do it in a different way to promote that special occasion. But no, I see the flag as being part of Great Britain, and I think we should fly it every day, like it's being proposed by the government, and we should be proud of doing that. That's my view.
Fine, but it's going to be a view of the council. Not sure if it's a recommendation to the council or decision we make tonight. So Councillor Long next. Jill. You're live.
thank you, Chairman. Now I'm torn. I agreed with your view, first of all, that if people see the flag flying, it draws their attention to the fact that it's a special day. But equally, following the practice as in Europe, as Councillor North East says, yes, we should be proud of our public buildings, the fact that, you know, it represents our local people and that we are there, well, virtually. So I'm rather torn, but I must admit, tending towards the let's fly it all the time camp. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jill. I've now got the screen up properly. So it's Councillor Malloy, the Mayor next, followed by Councillor Blanchard Cooper. So, Michelle.
Good evening. I like your approach, James, that how are we going to show that a day is special if we've got the flag up all the time? But I have to agree, I love the idea of the continuity and the uniform look across our government buildings. I just think it's a nice way for us to show what we are and who we are.
Thank you. Billy. Councillor Blanchard Cooper, followed by Councillor Butcher.
That's fine. I can always be called Billy. Yeah, I don't seem to have the red line anymore. Anyway, I have to say I was initially in agreement with yourself, James. I do like to see the Union flag flying. Although I do agree that it does then have that issue where you go, well, how do you identify particular days? But I think there's so much on social media now that people would be aware of it. So I think I'm leaning towards the fact that to have it constantly. I do have a question though. If we had it flying constantly, would it affect any of the other flags that we've agreed would fly? So for example, the Pride flag, for example.
Yes, the guidance is that we wouldn't fly the Union flag on that occasion. We'd be flying the other flag, like the Sussex flag, like the Town Council flag on council days, things like that. Yes.
Fantastic. And the only other thing I would say is that I know it's not going to be a huge amount, but I think we'd need to take into account that we'd need to put a little bit of extra money to one side for replacement flags because they would get worn out much quicker if they're up all the time. Only a small thing. Thank you.
Important. Thanks very much, Billy. Councillor Alan Butcher. Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that in some ways, by flying it all the time, we will also be featuring the fact of when we're not flying it, and that we're making an issue of putting a different flag up. And I think that's quite an attractive idea. The other thing that comes in my consideration is I think if we've got a flagpole, I quite like the idea that it's being made full use of. I think that by flying that all the time, as I say, it does provide a symbol that's there all of the time, and one that is in contrast with whatever it replaces it when we are flying a flag for a particular reason.
Thanks very much. Well, I think the mood of the committee is fairly clear to me, that we would like to see the Union flag flying every day, except on the days when we have our list of locally decided flags to fly, such as Pride, such as Sussex flag, such as Remembrance Tide, etc. Royal British Legion occasion, etc. So those other flags will fly on those days. Otherwise, we'll have the Union flag flying every day. Has everybody agreed to that?
Agreed.
That's a recommendation. That's a recommendation to council.
Sorry, these are all recommendations. Yes, yeah, we're agreeing recommendations when I ask if everybody's agreed.
Can I just ask very quickly?
Sorry, what was the question?
Would the Union flag be flown over weekends as well?
Yes.
Just left up. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Peter. You've got the steer on that one. We move on to the next one, which I think is the Pier Road entertainment expenditure.
I'm not sure this red light's going to come on ever, so I'm going to just go with it, Chair.
You're live.
It says live in your name box, but yes, of course, you can't see your name box. I can. So if I say you're live, that's probably the best thing. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, James. This is, members are aware of the Pier Road proposal. Well, not proposals, it's now in place, and the proposal that we, as a town council, have done to try and bring mainly some small-scale life and entertainment to the pedestrianised season. What we hadn't at any point, because this came after we put the budget together or anything like that, was provide any funds to pay for anyone to turn up. So this report, in its simplicity, looks to use an earmark reserve from the Community Resources Committee, which there are adequate funds within that committee's current budget to use should they need to do so, and which this committee has the power to do via funds around. And so the proposal is as set out in the report, Chair. Happy to answer any questions at all on this.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. Well, I'm very supportive of this, as many of us are. We've long felt that when Pier Road is pedestrianised, that it should be used for entertainment as well. I ate down there on Saturday night myself, and it's looking splendid with the tables out there. The restaurant they were going to put their own tables out this coming week. So the place is getting gradually more festive, and it was extremely busy and popular on Saturday. And I know during this warm weather it is. We can't guarantee the warm weather, but having the street entertainment there from time to time adds to the vibrancy, and hopefully getting visitors and tourists to stay longer, spend, and come back to Littlehampton. So very supportive of this. Who have I got next? Councillor North East, I think. No, it's the Mayor. Mayor first, Councillor Michelle and Malloy, and then Mike after that.
I think we've got Councillor Butcher as well, Chair.
Oh, I thought that was from the last. Oh, I beg your pardon. Yeah, it doesn't cancel them when they. So I have to rely on my memory over the last one. So it's Councillor Butcher first. You're quite right. All right. No, those are leftovers. Looking at the timing, that's left over from last time. It's the Mayor, Councillor Malloy first. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Michelle.
I'm fully supportive of this. I really like the idea of having the entertainment down there. I was just wondering whether it would come out of this budget or another one. Is it possible, if it's not already in place, to have some sort of signage with the schedule of entertainment there? Because we're all from this town, so we look at the social media posts and all the other bits to do with the town as to what's going on, but our visitors might not, and it might be nice for them to see, oh, there's someone here at 4 o'clock, we'll make sure we're there to have dinner then and stuff like that.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Super suggestion. Thanks, Michelle. Mike Northeast, Councillor Northeast.
Yeah, Michelle, you stole my thunder a little bit there on. I think it would be a good idea once we've got entertainment in place that we have some sort of program there and posters down there to say what's going to be happening. It's strange really, because you get the vibe when you're going to shut Pier Road, the traders initially are not that happy with it. They don't, you know, they want the passing trade and all that. But certainly from members of the public, for the first time this year, I was being asked when's Pier Road going to be shut again. They do like that pedestrianisation of Pier Road, which I think is great. Can I just ask one thing? What sort of entertainment are we looking at? That's the thing.
There's a variety, but I'll ask Peter to come in on that.
Yeah, firstly, I'll pick up the first joint point as such, which is yes, we will be doing schedules and we will be advertising what's there. So you're absolutely correct. Once we know, we'll do that. It's a good suggestion, and we will do so. At the moment, we've got two tiers of entertainment that we're looking at. One is to try and, well, it's three if we wish. It'd be great to get some of the buskers down, because they can actually generate their own funds, and but to give them a slot. What we're also working to is with LOCA and any other local organisation to get some small scale entertainers in its widest sense. This is everything. I mean, I've loosely put in there in the reports of anything from sort of mime to singing, music, entertainment in its widest sense. Small scale, you know, one man band even. And then with the bit that was picked up at this committee previously was the idea of trying to use some of the town centre events, the highlight points, to drop one or two of those into that, to have something a bit more special as well during that period.
Thank you. Got Councillor Jill Long. Jill, next, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're live.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very supportive of this. I think it really adds something special to that area. I walked down there last week and was very impressed with how the seating and tables have been arranged, and was actually listening to comments being made by people as they walked along the promenade area, asking how long it would be pedestrianised. All I could tell them was until the end of the season. But once we get more into the routine of this happening, then that too could be added to the schedules perhaps, or some other sort of signage. The signage at the moment is not wonderful, and I know that comment's been made before. So if it is going to become more of a routine, I think we do need to look at something a little more attractive that will dissuade cyclists and so on from using that area, but just adding to it. We did talk at one point of maybe having planters that we could put there, but maybe that's a discussion for elsewhere. But yes, very supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Yes, I think you're absolutely to draw attention. You're absolutely right to draw attention to if and when it becomes a permanent seasonal closure, that we should have a more appropriate and attractive signage policy, so that they are not sort of they're better this year than they were last year, I have to say, but that they are more welcoming and more in keeping with what the image we're trying to portray. And I think that's something that should go on the agenda for the next stage of this, along with actually taking the appropriate steps, because let's not forget that the current closure and last year's have both been achieved under the COVID emergency legislation and the emergency powers. If we want to extend it, we've got to go through a rather more protracted procedure with the county council, we're in the highway, of course, and I think we should start that procedure now, so that hopefully we won't have the COVID emergency next year, and it would be dreadful to lose the momentum that we've got with the pedestrianisation of the last 2 years. So if I can ask Peter to make a note of that, so that we actually get that on the agenda as well. Otherwise, I think everybody who's spoken has supported the recommendation here. There are three.
Councillor Northeast has asked to speak.
Oh, sorry, I beg. Yes, sorry, missed that one. Mike Northeast, Councillor Northeast.
It's only just to come back on what you and Jill have been saying about the signage. It's for want of a better phrase, it's like a car crash. It's not saying to people that we've got the pedestrianisation of.
Mike, I've lost you, although it says live.
Sorry.
I can't hear you.
What was the last thing I said? Can you hear me now?
It's like a car crash.
Yeah, I mean, the actual signage now just tells people that traffic's diverted. Doesn't tell them why or anything like that. And I think we need to say that it's because of the pedestrianisation. And I'm sure if we looked around, there's better signage than the ones we got there at the moment. It's just these dreadful boards that have been stuck in the road, say road closed and all that. It would be better, even if we had banners made up to go across the road, that it would be better with something like that, something a bit more colourful. Because as I say, at the moment it just looks like a car crash. It doesn't look like an event area or a pedestrianisation area. It just looks like as though there's been some sort of accident there.
I entirely agree with you, Mike, and I think it would be nice, even this year, we've got several months of it still to go, to have a couple of banners made up saying, I know the road closed has to be there from the legal point of view,
yes,
from the highways point of view, but a banner saying pedestrianised area ahead or pedestrian area ahead that actually gives it the flavour that we want it to. It needs to be a positive, welcoming people, drawing people in, rather than saying road closed, keep away. Yeah,
because it doesn't only say road closed to traffic.
No,
people could read it and think the road's closed, so they're not going down it.
Yeah, that's why I think pedestrian area ahead is the right sort of thing to have. Yeah.
So through you, Joe, we'll pass those back to the district because obviously they're the lead on this. So, but we will pass those back.
Okay. Well, we've got the recommendations on page. On page 20. Which I won't read out to you, to via the £8,000 as a budget item that we can draw down from for the street entertainment, and to approve acts with the chairs and vice chairs of this advisory group and the community resources advisory group. Everybody happy with those recommendations?
Agreed.
Yes,
Agreed.
absolutely.
Agreed.
That's unanimous. Thanks very much indeed for that. We then move on to page 21, which is the Town Centre High Street Events and Welcome Back Fund. So over to you again, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This covers, as it says in the title, 3 areas. One is an update on the Town Centre events. The second one is, perhaps I really want to focus, I should say, is on the Welcome Back Fund. This is a government initiative to encourage people back to the retail hubs, and we've circulated details of it to members previously and have had some wide range of suggestions which we've referred back to the district, who are themselves in liaison with powers that be as to what's acceptable and what isn't. In broad terms, what's acceptable is something that is completely new, is time limited, and those are the 2 key things, and can show value for money. So we've had some suggestions back. There are other ideas around. I'm sure other members either at this meeting or afterwards can let me have anything else they have. Sophia and I will process those as they go, and the report proposes a mechanism to sign those off, because once we've got them together, we've got costings and so on, we can submit. It is important that we submit, but at the same time, because it's great to have some encouragement for people to come back into the town. But they do need to meet the criteria which we've attached with the report. But I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thanks very much. I can see Councillor North East is typing, so he's going to be the first one to question. Councillor North East, you're live.
Thank you, James. That's very observant. Yes, I can agree with this more or less, but there is one side of it which I want to try and straighten out a little bit, and that is we got ourselves into a bit of a mess over the 3D artwork, and that was down to the fact of delegating to the chair and vice chair to sign it off, and the committee not really knowing what was happening or what was going on there in detail. Now, what I'd like to see in those recommendations, and this still keeps it within what full council said on the 29th, but I would like to see we're a relatively small committee and we're working virtually now, so everything can be done online, but to give the committee a couple of days or so just to see what the proposals are, and if we've got any view on it or any questions, having that chance just to put those questions to the clerk and to the chair before a decision is made. Now, it may well be that the questions that come back or the comments that come back prompts the chair to say, I'm sorry, we can't go ahead with this until we've had a committee meeting, and call even if it is an emergency committee meeting just for one subject. But at least that way it's going through on consensus of the committee, and we're presenting something to full council that the committee's agreed, not just the chair and vice chair. So I think there's room there to change 4 in the recommendation, to change 4 to 5, and just to make sure to update details of proposed events to all members of PNF for comment prior to sign off.
I've got through you, Chair. I've got absolutely no issues with that. But in fact, if we're going to do that, I'd circulate to all the council, Chair. Just say they've got 2 days to come back or whatever. That's
up to this committee. I was only just saying that for PNF, but if that's the feeling of this committee, I'd like it presented to all councillors, then so be it. But I still feel that this committee has got a remit to make policy and deal with the finances of that policy. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, it would be for the remit of this committee to decide it ultimately and present it to council. But obviously, I'd leave that open for debate.
Thanks very much, Mike, and I support you in that. And it's a moot point whether it goes to the whole council or just to members of this committee and or CRC, who I think I would also include. So it may be just members of CRC. And by that time, you've got nearly most of the council anyway. So that's probably the right way forward. So I've got Councillor Butcher Allen next, please.
Thank you, Jim.
You're live.
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's very sensible to make sure that other councillors have seen it, have seen the nature of what will happen, and I think it's a really important point, really. I take the point that there's not going to be a lot of difference between whether it goes to full council or the 2 big committees, but I would say the logic of the situation, I think, is that it would go to the committees because it is being run through those, or rather the groups, we should say, at the moment. And so, I would suggest that it should go to the relevant body with the remit involved. But obviously, if people feel that it should go to the whole council, then it's not going to make a massive amount of difference. But I think I'd go for a preference that it be done in tandem with the way that we work, and And yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say on that. But it's a very positive thing that's being done anyway. But I just think that it's really important with all of these things that enough eyes have seen it, but also that the way that the council works is recognised.
Thanks, Alan. I've got the mayor next, Michelle.
Thank you. I agree with Mike, and I would be happy to see it go back to this committee and CRC as well. I think that would be quite nice for a nice rounded approach on what we're looking to do. I just want to say, obviously, we've got our main high street, which we all love, but I really do want us to try and focus on Wick a little bit as well with some of this money. They're their own high street in their own little right, and they do really well. And I don't feel that they ask a lot from us. So if we can try and get something in Wick as well, just to pretty it up and make it a bit nicer, I'd be really happy with that.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Peter, are you happy with those?
I'm happy.
And a recommendation that we consult with by email in over 24 or 48 hours, members of CRC and this committee.
I'm slightly mystified by the CRC, but I think we might have confused two reports, Chair. This is wholly within the remit of P&F.
Okay, well, let's keep it with P&F then. Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to consult CRC. There's nothing against them. I'm just, in terms of its oversight, it's just policy and finance.
Yeah. Okay. But okay.
If members are happy with that.
Are members happy with that? That it should go to all members of the committee rather than the group, rather than just the chair and the vice chair? I think everybody's indicating.
Chairman, I did ask for it to go into the recommendations, if that was okay.
Yeah, sorry, I meant that. So if we could have a further recommendation, Peter, that all members of this committee should be consulted by email. Yeah. I'd hesitate to put a 24 or 48 hours on it.
I think it'll depend, Chair, it'll depend wholly on what the urgency is.
Exactly.
That time.
Exactly.
If there's no urgency, I'll give you a week. If there's if it's going to be done by that afternoon, it'll be an hour.
Exactly. Fine. So you're happy to include? Are we all happy then to include that as a further recommendation?
Chair, Councillor Long has indicated she wishes to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Jill.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to support what Councillor Malloy said, for us to include Wick in whatever proposals we come up with. We don't want to overlook them in the slightest.
No.
Thank you.
And sorry, as a parting shot from the clerk, Chair, if any members have any suggestions still, urgently, could we have them? I know Wick's come up with, I know several councillors here have. You get the gold stars, councillors, but not everybody's been so active. So I'm saying that into the ether. If you speak to your groups or whatever, that would be helpful. Or colleagues, any suggestions, more than welcome.
Thank you. Or even perhaps an email around to every councillor saying your last chance to put forward suggestions. Okay. Yep. Okay. Well, I think we're agreed on that then, Peter. Thanks very much indeed. So we move on to the next item, which is pages 50 to 52, community wardens. And again, over to you, Peter. Yes, Chair. Next, well, not necessarily at the July meeting, but at the next next proper meeting, which is in September, you will be joined by the senior community warden, hopefully in person, and we will all be meeting in the real world, and we'll be able to go from there. But what he's done at the moment is to provide a short report for us, just on his and the team's early days, and which is quite expansive. In fact, quite a lot. In fact, I know of other things they've done even since he wrote this report for me. So it's been quite active. I'm getting quite a lot of positive feedback at the moment, but it's really brought to members just so that you're in the loop and know what's happening. We have arranged, I think, at least two sessions for members to come in and talk to the wardens. One of the reasons for that is partly so you get to know them, but the other bit is that some of the best people out there for what's happening in their, well, some of the very best people out there for what's happening in your ward are councillors. You're hearing things that not necessarily everybody else does. So
it's really important that we're having that dialogue. That's why we've arranged these sessions. But other than that, what we're trying to do is to get all suggested work or anything like that from the town council's point of view, be it from its officers or members of the public or from councillors, to come through me so that we can direct that. Because what we can't really have is the wardens just running around in small circles. We need to prioritise and so on with that. I'm going to throw in a bonus bit to this, Chair, if you'll forgive me, but it does link to policing. Last week, particularly, we had quite a number of upturn in ASB and other matters. And as a result of which, I'm meeting with the Chief Inspector this week. And one of the key questions I will be asking in that, and it is something that members have fed back to me, it's not sort of just off my own cuff, is what's happened to the much trumpeted PCSOs?
Yeah.
By my reckoning, we were told that there would be 3 in in Littlehampton Town, 2 in Littlehampton East, and 2 in Arundel and Wick. So by my reckoning, there should be 6 of them in the parish of Littlehampton. We know there's one that's working exceptionally hard in town, and I know there's one working quite hard very hard, I'm sure, up in Wick. But where are the 6, and when and where are they? So that's one of the questions we'll be asking. It's also a question that raised itself when the Deputy Mayor and I met with a representative of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we've fed that back, and they're trying to get the answers for us as well. So I just feed that in as a sort of allied bit to that, because it's a good hook to hang it on, I think, Chair. So
Thanks.
Apart from that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Peter, for that. And you've stolen my thunder, because I was going to ask about the PCSOs, because I share that concern, and it's quite widely shared by members of the community. And just as an aside, I've just been appointed by the County Council to the Police and Crime Panel that oversees the work of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I'll have a slightly more direct line in there for the next 4 years, which will be useful, I think, to get more feedback from the Police and Crime Commissioner. I've got Councillor Long, Jill down. Jill.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I took advantage of the opportunity to meet with the community wardens a couple of weeks ago, and came away from that meeting very much more reassured about how they were actually going to take their role forward, all of which is actually contained within the report that we have before us today. They've certainly been out and about all over the place. As I say, I went to Pier Road last week, and there were 2 of them chatting to local residents, but they're able to get out into the quieter areas as well, and getting to know people. At the meeting, I was able to, along with other councillors, suggest particular organisations they might want to make contact with, and they're sort of making a list of all of those. But as I say, I came away feeling very much encouraged, and I think it will be a worthwhile period of time to let this really bed in. But you can see they're already coming up with results, as it were. So yeah, I'm supportive of all this at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jill. I've got Councillor Malloy, the Mayor, next, please.
Thank you. We can probably remember that I sat on this committee when we were talking about the community wardens, and I was absolutely dead set that they were not the right thing for us. Because from the feedback that I'd had from the public, that they wanted to see a more robust enforcement presence on our streets. The people that we have got here, these community wardens, I took the time to meet them along with Councillor Long, and the reassurance they gave me as a group of people, the diversity they have amongst them, the skill set from their previous jobs that they have, was so reassuring. Okay, their job role might not be what some of us originally wanted it to be, but I have every comfort knowing that I think that they are going to do what they are meant to be doing, what their job role at this point in time is. I think they're going to do it brilliantly, and I'm really pleased to see that they are going to be moving forward to try and get accredited in other aspects of what they can and can't do.
Thanks very much, Michelle, for that. Councillor Butcher, Alan, next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I I would have to say that I've been a skeptic about the concept of the wardens too, and I would at least say that the first report that we have in front of us is somewhat encouraging, and I look forward to meeting with them tomorrow in one of the meetups that they've organised, and certainly would give them a fair go as far as proving their worth. I am, however, very pleased to hear that the PCSOs are being pursued, because I think that it's really important that they are implemented within the town, and I think the wardens may be of help, but the PCSOs remain extremely important and indeed a vital part of the picture, so I'll be looking with interest to see how the inquiries go with regard to where the additional PCSOs are. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alan, for that. And finally, Councillor North East, Mike.
Thanks, Chairman. Myself, like Councillor Malloy, I was dead against these wardens from the outset, and I have to say, even reading the report, yes, there has been some work done, but we'd expect that anyway. We're paying them to do that. What concerns me is the lack of these PCSOs. We were promised those, plus we were promised as well by the government that there would be thousands more police officers on our streets, and we're not seeing that at present. I would like to think that perhaps these wardens are just a stepping stone towards getting back to full, proper community policing, where the police did get involved with organisations and events. People did know them and spoke to them and gave them the intelligence that was needed to combat other crimes in the area. There was one thing in the report that did raise alarm bells with me, and that was the dealing with I forget what the exact wording was, but it was sort of low calorie or low carb drug use or drug misuse within the area. Now, I think where the wardens have got to be extremely careful is that I know from myself, and you will know, James, when you've reported drug dealing in the past, there's quite a covert operation that goes on by the police,
yeah,
of watching and gathering information, not only to get the small fry, if you like, the ones that are coerced in for a few quid to push drugs on the streets, but to get to the bigger picture. Now, what I wouldn't want to see is the wardens getting involved and blowing cover on a situation which the police are already there, putting a lot of time and effort in, because, you know, we get the public come back to us and say, well, the police aren't doing anything, but you can't tell them that they are doing something. They are there, they are working hard to expose not just the small fry in the crime, but to get to the bigger players in it. And I wouldn't want to see our wardens detract from any of that or actually blow cover of people. So I think it needs to be very careful what they're doing there, and that is why I've always said that I think it should be left to the police, things like that. And I still believe that a uniformed officer on our street is worth 2 wardens. And I think if we are going to go back to having more community wardens on there, perhaps we should look at the money that we're spending on these wardens to in fact increase the amount of PCSOs that we've got long term.
Thanks, Mike. I've got one more now. Councillor Billy Blanchard Cooper, please. Billy.
Thank you, Chair. I met with with Councillor Woodman the other day, the new wardens, and I was pleased to see this introduced. I was even more pleased when I actually met them. In speaking with them, their combined histories, and which obviously equates to their knowledge and expertise, is amazing. They have so much to offer from their pasts to our community. They have already done loads of work, which has been great. And I appreciate my, Councillor North East's comments about would rather see more police. Yes, I would rather see more police, but I don't think it's right for the town council to be offering that because, and this has been stated in meeting after meeting, if we pay for police, the police have the right to take them wherever they want. It would not be that they are kept within our community and delegated areas. If there was an issue in Worthing, in Bognor, in Chichester, wherever, they could and would be taken off and moved elsewhere because they are still fundamentally police. And that is the reason we went for the wardens. That's my understanding. I'm sure Peter will correct me if I'm wrong on that. And that's why we need to have the wardens rather than the police. I would love to see more police everywhere. And that is an issue that I'm sure James is going to take up at West Sussex County Council on our behalf as well. Because we do need to see them more regularly. We need to see them across the area. Seeing the police does help, but having these wardens is going to offer a lot to the town. They've got visions already of how they want to progress their roles. And as I say, if anyone hasn't yet spoken to them within the council, I would highly encourage it because I was already looking forward to meeting them. I went away and was blown, my mind was blown by the amount of different experience they have got and what they are bringing to the table for us as a town council. Cheers.
Thanks, Billy, for that. That's very, very supportive comments from everybody. I'm with you. I don't think we should be paying into the police pot. We're taxed for that, and they should be supplying what they've promised, and for the reasons you've mentioned as well. So I think we're being asked to note the report. Peter has heard what we've said, and he can feed back the comments when he next again meets the police chief inspector, and I will do so in my new role as well. So if we're happy, we'll note the report and move on. Peter, did you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. I need to pick up on something Councillor North East said, because it's a very important point, and about their involvement with, sounds bleak, their involvement with drugs, but you know what I mean. It's a twofold thing. They are working very closely with the police, and they are linked in, and they are having briefings, shared briefings and so on. So their reports are going to the police. A lot of their stuff is observational. They're not trying to arrest the local. What they are having success in, however, and whilst it's not necessarily resolving crime, it is important for the town centre, which is where we had a particular, as I say, big spike. Is their very visibility and presence has moved some of the more open, both drug pushing and use, hopefully out of the eyesight a bit. Now that in itself doesn't resolve the problem, but it does help the town centre. It is, what is the problem at the moment, and this is the point about the PCSOs, is they're not there. No one is reporting anything. So they aren't there to, as Councillor North East quite rightly said, they're not there to interfere into the prosecution and up the chain or whatever. But where they can provide useful information about hotspots, I mean, there are certain points in the town where I look at you, councillors, Dr. Walsh and Councillor North East, who've been councillors for a very long time, and they come as no surprise, those spots. They seem to come as a surprise to the police, mainly possibly because they keep changing people so frequently. So that's again something I'm going to raise, but at least the evidence, they will have a different form of evidence coming before them, because there is report fatigue amongst traders. Yeah. The police will turn around and say, well, we've got few reports, but it's because they've been reporting for 20 years. And if nothing's happened in 20 years, another report doesn't take you further forward. So those are the kind of issues I will be taking forward with DCI Carter, or Chief Inspector Carter. But they're a fair point, Councillor North East, and if you have a chance to speak to them, you'll see how they link in with the police briefings.
Thanks, Peter, for that. That's useful, and thank you for your reassurances. You'll take all those issues up with John Carter when you see him. Did you say tomorrow or very shortly?
I think it's Thursday, Chair.
Fine. Okay, great. Otherwise, we're asked to note that report, which I'm sure we've all done. And if we can then move on to the next item, which is on pages 50 onwards, on the town centre manager stroke regeneration officer. Quite a weighty report, and I'm going to ask Peter to take us through it.
Thank you, Chair. I do not propose to go back through history here and run you by everything. I've hopefully included that in the report, and members will have had a chance to see that. The reason I've included it, though, is to refresh members in terms of what happened, but what actually I'm trying to get from members what you envisage the post being in the future. And in doing that, identifying the level of responsibilities that that post will have, that we can then apply a commensurate salary to that, and then by taking on the on cost, know how much it is that it's going to cost. I have put some figures in there, but they are real finger in the wind figures. They're not something to steer you by. That's almost the middle of the road. At the last one of the meetings, a reference was made to £20,000 a year. I mean, that would have to be for 1 day or 2 days a week if it was going to be the case. So what I've tried to do, so I then sent a questionnaire out to members, and I had 4 responses, plus another one which I've circulated today, which didn't really answer the questionnaire, but it did come up with some very good points I'm sure members have had a chance to consider. But a way forward for us could be for this committee to just give a direction in terms of those key areas, i.e. what do they see the role, how the level of responsibility that goes with it, and the kind of outline budget, to which we can go to council in a week and a half's time and get support or not, as the case may be, for that broad outline proposal, which will then enable me to draw up something, depending upon where it is that you've gone, to come back to the Policy and Finance Committee in July for you to hopefully agree a way forward. So that's the sort of timeline that I've tried to set out. And because at the moment, I know lots of things you disliked about the previous post, but I don't know the direction I haven't got a unanimity or even a majority in my mind as to what it is that you want. I would also, because you talked about a very different post, albeit to my mind unclearly, but you talked about a very different post. What I should flag up is if you end up moving significantly towards the previous post in terms of its responsibilities, the dreaded acronym TUPE may come into play. So for those members, I hope I'm going to just TUPE is the transfer of undertakings for the protection of employees, but basically means that where an employee of any organisation moves from one, when a piece of work moves from one organisation to another, the employees involved there are protected. So depending upon where you go, I may need to seek some urgent advice on TUPE. I just flagged that at this point. The other thing I should flag to you is if you were to end up with a certain level of salary, you've got to be aware that that could unbalance the rest of the salaries at the town council. So there may be a need for, once you've got in a mindset on this, a meeting of property and personnel to consider where this actually impacts the council. So the reason for that, just to be clear, is that parish and town councils tend to pay less than principal authorities for posts. So most of these town centre managers are appointed by principal authorities. Most, not all, but most. And they have a salary structure which would be higher than the town and parish council would. So there is the potential, if you were to pitch at the higher end of this post, that it could end up easily being the second highest paid person in the council, which would not work in terms of equal pay for equal work. So there are a number, but I can deal with those later, and I can deal with them with property and personnel, and necessary we can sort that out. But you need to know there is a backdrop there. But I'll shut up in 1 second. But if members could really focus on what they see the role as, basically we'll take the notes of this tonight, we'll take it to council, And what do you see the level of responsibility? To a degree, the money will follow that, either in terms of equanimity within the town council or in terms of what the market's prepared to stand in terms of employing someone. I'm happy to answer questions, but look forward to your guidance, councillors.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. I've got Mike North East to speak. I just want to say a couple of words myself. I think part of the problem in the past has been people not quite sure who the current town manager is responsible to and who he's working for, etc. And we know it's been a joint appointment that we've been involved. Sorry, it's an Aaron appointment, but we've been involved with it from the beginning. But Aaron have seen different uses and different views on the deployment of that officer, including to Bognor Regis on occasions, dealing with regeneration and town centre issues there. And I think it's very important that if we as a town council are going to initiate taking this forward, that the person should have a focus solely on Littlehampton and Littlehampton Town Centre and Wick, and that should be his or her focus. And I'm very much minded to support the general approach. I wouldn't subscribe to everything that is in the written submission from the from Celia, the chairman of the Town Traders Partnership, and that seems to sum up an awful lot of what my view of the role should be. But I'll ask Councillor North East Mike to come in next.
Thanks, Chairman. I tend to be sort of, and I know we shouldn't, but looking back to what we did with the Town Centre Action Group and when the town was regenerated all those years ago. And what it seems to me at the moment is we've got too many committees pulling in different directions with nobody sort of pulling it all together. And that's what I see the role of the Town Centre Manager Regeneration Officer to do. I think he should head up a small committee with all authorities concerned, plus traders, plus even members of the public that could have an input into that group to actually decide what goes on in our town centre. Certainly we need to move on from what we've had in the past, which I've been highly critical of, and I've never seen it as good value for money. We can compare ourselves, if you like, to what's going on in Rustington as a shopping centre, and certainly when we came out of lockdown, they were quick off the blocks with the way they signposted, put banners up, and they were everywhere, even in Littlehampton, promoting Rustington as a shopping centre, and they still are. And we don't do that. We haven't got that anywhere. We had a couple of small banners which were, there was so much writing on them, you needed a magnifying glass to stand near to them to actually read what was on there. But I think I've read through all these documents here, and I think one of the best documents here is from the traders.
Yes.
Where they list out most of the things, and I've read through them, and I agree with all of them, of what the criteria should be for a town centre manager. And I mean, when you read it, they're pretty obvious. Be approachable to business and be or strive to become a familiar face with the public and our community. That's exactly what we want. You know, people don't know our town centre manager. It should be somebody that's known by people and they can go to and say we want to have experience with marketing campaigns and advertising. Yeah, of course. That's what we should have. I mean, but when we did it, Miriam Nichols was the officer at Aaron, but we had the guidance of a guy from Boots at the time. He was a retail, I forget the name, some grandiose title, but he was some retail guru. And that is all you want. You don't want somebody coming in and saying you should have this, you should have that, you should have that. They should be a facilitator to tell us how we get it. It's us on the ground that say what we want in the town. and they're traders, they're residents. We should be the ones that are saying that's what we want for our town centre, that's what we want to see happen. So I would certainly take this document from the traders and work with that. And perhaps there's even room there to add to them. But I just wonder as well whether tonight is the right time to be discussing this in so much detail and depth, because I do feel that having a proper in-depth discussion through this, there's going to be no end of other questions coming up, which at the moment, just reading this, I don't know whether I can make a definite decision on what sort of person we should have in the role. And I just wonder whether we should have had some sort of special one-off meeting just with this subject. In other words, to scrutinise it, to look at it as a select committee rather than a policy-making committee, and take it apart a bit more. But
Thanks. Sorry, Mike.
I'm more than happy, James, to go with the traders' recommendations. But as I say, it's open to be added to at any time. Thanks, James.
Thanks very much, Mike. Well, yeah, that was my view as well. That was a good starting point. I don't think Peter's asking for us to sign it off tonight. I think he's actually asking to start the discussion tonight, and to give him a steer to take the report to the next meeting in July. So we're not being asked to say, yeah, that's where we want to go and sign on the dotted line tonight. It's ideas night tonight. And you and I both agreed that the traders' submission, 2 pages there of A4, is a very good starting point. And in fact, from my point of view, it probably says 90% of it, plus or minus a little bit that we might want to feed in. I've got 3 more speakers now. Councillor Jill Long next, followed by the Mayor. Jill, you're mute.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, the traders paper is interesting. Do they represent all of the traders or just some of them? I'm just leaving that one out there because I'm not certain. In terms of how Rustington deals with things, well, there effectively you've got one landlord, whereas in Littlehampton we have many. And I think trying to get any sort of joint agreement between them is going to be difficult. With the best will in the world, it'd be a bit like herding cats. This is just my understanding of it. To try and get my head around what I felt we needed, I literally start jotting down all those various agencies, and you're right, there are loads of them, all of whom have a greater or lesser impact on what we're trying to achieve in the town centre, the High Street particularly. I then looked for job descriptions on Google from other places to get some sense of what other towns look for, to develop relationships within the retail and hospitality sectors to encourage vitality and economic growth in brackets name of town, working with key stakeholders to deliver strategy and business development for long-term results, all of which resonated with how I was beginning to see this role. What I wouldn't want the person to become would be an agent, as it were, for just the traders, but having that broad remit across all the organisations that do impact on what we do in the high street. Skills to engage with large and small businesses, support their growth and development. Regeneration really is under the auspices of the district council. So can we sort of not think about that as part of this role? Having said that, we will need input from the district council, because if you're trying to improve the offer in our high street, then that is within the remit of the district council. And as the town clerk has already said, whatever sort of level we pitch this person at, or this role at, possibly will have an impact on other officers within the town council, and we do need to be very mindful of that. Whether that means that other jobs can be expanded to take on new parts of a different role or whatever, I don't know. But I think the focus needs to be very much for Littlehampton, for the town centre. Maybe that will roll over to include Wick as a centre as well. Again, we really need to include them within whatever discussions we have. But it really does need to be very much somebody who can pull all of those agencies together and work with them, but lead them to meet our strategies, our priorities as a council, and actually take those forward. We worked very hard on looking at what our priorities are. We're now working hard also on developing our strategy for the town centre. And I think that ought to give us a clearer picture of the sort of individual that we're looking for and what exactly this role needs to encourage and to encapsulate. I'm getting a clearer idea. I just don't seem to be able to articulate it particularly well, but that's kind of where I am at the moment. I've got my map of blobs, which seems to be growing almost every day, but that's the sort of person. They've got to be a person who can coordinate and lead all of those agencies to take forward our idea of what we want to do in the town centre and in Wick as well. Not sure if that helps, but that's where I'm at the moment.
No, very helpful. Very helpful, Madam Deputy Mayor. Very good. Thank you. I've now got the Mayor, Michelle, please, followed by Billy.
Thank you. I have to say I'm on the same page with Jill on this needs to be a proper leader's role. This person needs to lead our high street for all the changes that are happening. And this person I feel does need to pull all the different agencies together, but I don't want this person to fall into the role of a secretary for them. I don't want them, oh, I'll print your leaflets and I'll type up this for you and stuff like that. This person is the leader. He needs someone, or he or she should have someone to do that for them or with them. They don't need to be that secretary for the town. I think we really need to be sure on, as councillors, what we want from them, which is obviously what we're going to be looking at. Because in some of these ideas that we've got here, we go from documented smart approaches to picking up litter, and I just don't think this job role is a role for someone to be picking up the rubbish. That's for the cleansing team. So we need to be quite sure as councillors that we don't want that person doing things like that. We want them approaching from another way. They don't need to be seen walking through the town and cleaning the graffiti. I really don't agree with that this person needs a base on the high street. I just don't think it's necessary in today's world. And I do think we should be taking some of the things from the traders partnerships ideas in there as well. But I do know the traders partnership doesn't include all the traders, so if we're going to be taking their approach, we should probably approach some of our other traders as well and say, what do you want, because we are leaving a big portion of them out.
Absolutely spot on there. That answers Jill's earlier question about do they represent all, and we know they don't. Some of the bigger ones, in fact most of the bigger ones aren't part of it, unfortunately. I've got Councillor Billy Blanchard Cooper next, followed by Councillor Butcher. Billy.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I don't think we can really decide all this here tonight. I think what really is needed is a start and finish group for this. If not, we're going to be in the same problems that we've had in the past, where 101 different people say 101 different things, and no one, particularly the council, gets what they want. I strongly feel that we need to have a task and finish group set up to discuss all of this and agree a recommendation to full council as to what the job role is to include. And that can just be done. It doesn't need to be in a committee meeting. It just needs to be around the table, a couple of sessions, and bang it out and get it done. That said, the one thing I would be particularly keen to see included, sorry, my voice is going at the moment because of hay fever. The the one thing I would be very keen to see included is an aspect of the work which is back to basic general management. Anyone who manages a shop or a business should know that you start from the outside and work your way in. So it should be that you go around on a daily basis or a 2 daily basis and check the signage, check your windows, check the basics. And that's what has really been missing for a long time, is someone who goes through regularly and doesn't do it, but gets on and goes, okay, the arcade, the entrance to the arcade, there's loads of pigeon mess there, get it cleaned. I've had to report that numerous times. We just need someone who goes through and makes sure that our town is presented to its best, because if we present our town at its best, people will keep coming back. So that's making sure of all of the real basic jobs. It shouldn't be a huge thing to do that, and it should just be a walk through half an hour each morning or whenever, just to get those bits ticked and reported. The first time you do it, it takes ages, and it then becomes easier and easier and easier, as anyone would know. But that's the real key thing for me, because there's lots of different other suggestions here tonight, which I agree with, but I do feel if we're going to move on, we do need to try and get in a room and literally list the entire thing and what the strategy is for this role. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. I've got Councillor Butcher. Alan next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think I tend to agree that the 2-page traded document is a good starting point. I think that one of the advantages of it is perhaps that it's not written in sort of local government speak, and that may be what's attracting to us. I think I take the points, though, that obviously there may well be other areas of significance that are not necessarily covered in there. If it is to remain a role that's sent, or at least significantly applies to regeneration, then I think that, to me, what's missing in a lot of what's there is the concept of diversification of the town's centre. And I think that if you're going to talk about regeneration of the town centre, it has to include something about the way in which somebody will pull together the sorts of community leisure establishments that might potentially enhance the town centre. And because I think that it's a very obvious fact that retail is not enough to sustain a high street. It's very important, but it's also very important that the agencies and local authorities that are involved are in some way trying to build into the town centre facilities or some form of access, which is making that town centre one of the centres of the community. And the other thing that I would say is obviously I quite agree that it's important that the Wood Street area is paid attention to by this person, because it is the other really major area of shopping centre, etc., which is in the town, and it has, on a smaller scale, the same sorts of issues that the town centre does. So I think it's key that would be a part of their role, and I think that I agree with the fact that the one thing perhaps in the traders listing, which I don't really see a massive value to, is the idea of somebody being based on the high street themselves. I think that the idea that everybody should be looking down towards the manor house in terms of the leadership of this type of thing is a perfectly reasonable one, and it would be good if they were based in in the town council, and I think that in some ways makes the point that whilst we may not have as a town council responsibility for huge parts of regeneration, I think we have a massive role in terms of leadership ourselves, and in having that person working within the town council, I think it would give them the opportunity, and certainly should give them the opportunity, to be a leader of these issues as well. So I think that's all the points that I have. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alan. Mike Northeast wants to come back, and then the mayor. Mike.
Thank you, James. Yeah, if I just come back, I mean, I never for one moment said that this the traders document was a definitive document. I did say that it was a good starting point, a good base for us to work from. I totally agree with Jill, and that is that we need somebody that's going to pull all the agencies with a vested interest in the town together, and that was exactly the role that was played by the Town Centre Action Group. And can I say, even then, there was 2 or 3 groups of traders. You know, there was a traders partnership then, but we also had the Chamber of Commerce, and I think there was another organisation as well. But all of those organisations would be included in a group and headed up by the town centre manager running that. The other thing as well, yes, the big boys are difficult to get on board, because it's the red tape that they have to go through just to do the slightest thing in the town, and you'll find they won't want to do that. They won't want to get involved if it's going to create a lot of work for them. But in saying that, they can be useful in other ways, and that is down to the town centre manager. I mean, back in the days, it was Miriam that went round and courted all those large organisations. But it would be the role of the town centre manager now. So yes, let's look at this. Oh, I also agree with Billy as well. I think there's room here for. I don't think we need to create another working group or anything like that. I think there's only 6 of us as a committee. There's no reason why we shouldn't meet as a committee and discuss all this and then present it to council later on. As Peter said, I think he's going to be presented at the next meeting. I'd like to see it as a single agenda item meeting, because I think there's so much in here to go through that it's going to take up a hell of a lot of time of the meeting, and we want to get it right. We do. Yeah. So let's think along those lines. But yes, use the traders document as a benchmark. Let's move on from there. We can add to it, and I'm sure we will. And let's have a one-off meeting just to discuss all this. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Mike. And finally, I've got the mayor, Michelle.
Thank you. I agree with Mike. This needs to be something on its own meeting to really get out what we need from this. Sorry, Chair, did you say at the beginning that you only had 4 responses from councillors? I just need to voice that I find that so disappointing on a role that's going to be so instrumental into improving our high street. I just feel that I need to get that out there, because I remember from previous meetings we were all so vocal on what we did and didn't want, and to not have everyone's feedback is quite disappointing, because some people might have some really great ideas of what we expect, but they're obviously not on the paperwork now.
Thanks, Michelle. Right, over to you, Peter.
There's only a few points. I've got quite a lot of information. Thank you, councillors. And I think the first one is I'll pick the deal with the last one first. Barring any other significant major items cropping up, the Policy and Finance Committee that's in July would have normally been cancelled. It's just sat there as a catch-all. So I'm seeing that meeting as being, as I sit here today, being a one-item meeting. There is nothing else planned for it. So, I mean,
perfect.
Something could crop up between now and then, but as I sit here, that's how I see that. I probably bore you to tears by saying this. I just need to re-emphasise the Town Council doesn't get business rates. It's just as important the members bear that in mind. It doesn't mean you can't spend the money or anything like that, but it's just important to remember that the business rates go to the district, not us, and the county for that matter. The questions of sorry. So I've picked up within there almost 2 strands of job, which I'm quite happy to write up and take to council and get a steer on. I haven't heard anything about money here, and that doesn't necessarily matter. We may have to may need to back to and from extraordinary council meeting to extraordinary P&F or whatever to get there. That may be the case. I will try and seek a steer from council as to what their budget cap might be, to at least give us something to work within. Because what that might do is you might go for a higher level senior job, but that might need to work fewer days. It depends if once you've got the cap. So the one other point I was going to make, sorry, is, and it was something Councillor North East said. Oh yeah, no, it's just I was reiterating that the fact that Councillor North East sort of said about making a decision now, just to re-emphasise that isn't the case. I'm literally after direction here, so that we can go through, as it may, as I say, have to flip-flop between council and P&F, but we will get there. It may mean that we end up meeting in August if we don't get there early enough. It may also mean I need to bring property and personnel into play once this draws itself up, because there are potentially other issues, as I mentioned. I will almost certainly need to get legal advice on GP, because if we fall into that hole, it could cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I will need to go down that route as well. So, so other than that, councillors, I think you give me a good steer, apart from on the finance. But perhaps if you're happy, you can either have a stab at it now, councillors, or let it emerge as we take it through council.
I would very much counsel the group, the committee, into not taking a financial view now, because I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to decide what we want and then see what A, what we can afford, and B, what it's going to cost us, rather than saying this is how much money we've got to spend, let's find somebody to spend it. We need to know what we want to spend it on first and to work from there onwards. So I see that as the next stage in the process, rather than saying plucking a figure tonight and saying that's the cap.
Okay. So the other thing I was going to say, sorry, Chair, was just in terms of finance, just so you're aware, I mean, it's written in the report, we can probably box and cox for the 6 months of this financial year, but the decisions that you make will obviously roll on after that. Yeah. So they will have significant budgetary implications for the next few years. Absolutely. So it's just important to bear in mind at all times.
So, colleagues, are the committee, the group, happy to take it forward on the basis of what we've all said, working from the basis of the town traders, not saying we accept that, that's just a working document from which we start, or Peter bases his report that's coming to the July meeting, which will be a single issue a meeting of a committee, and we should then be able to hopefully finalise it with the financial picture clearer then as well.
Chair, could I just, if your members are happy, could you? I think you probably need to authorise me to get GP advice if necessary as an additional resolution.
Yeah, I'm sure members are very happy that, because it protects our position. So can I ask the committee, are you happy to accept those recommendations to the town clerk?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Thanks very much indeed. That's great. And we then move on quickly to item 7.6, policy recommendation. Hope this should just be a quick nod through. It came to CRC last week and was unanimously adopted in, I think, about 60 seconds. I'll read it to you. Littlehampton Town Council supports the provision of access to all facilities in the town for people of all abilities. It's basically an overarching accessibility statement which will apply to all our policies insofar as that we can influence things. And I'd formally move that to the for the committee, if we're happy with that. Anybody not happy with that? No. So are we all content to accept that as a recommendation to the council?
Yes.
Agreed.
Thanks very much indeed. That's that one dealt with. And finally, then we're on to item 8, the committee budget monitor, which is pages 77 to 83. And I'll ask Peter to take us to that. All straightforward, I think.
All straightforward, Chair. I should, of course, draw your attention as a Policy and Finance Committee to the fact that this will probably be the last one that you received from the Deputy Town Clerk and Responsible Financial Officer, as she is moving on to pastures new, i.e., as we know it, Lewes, where she will become the Town Clerk from the beginning of September. So whilst I'm happy to answer any questions, I really want to flag that up to members. We have a process in hand, which hopefully will be looking about early July at interviewing. So if all goes well, we'll know the successor and things will be seamless. The world's not quite like that sometimes, so we'll find out what actually happens in reality. Happy to answer any questions though, Chair.
Well, I'd like to, on behalf of the committee, to formally record our huge thanks. I know we'll do it at full council as well, but Policy and Finance Committee has the most to do with Laura, to thank her for her extraordinarily diligent work over the last few years in keeping her BDI on all our financial matters, and we've had a clean bill of health from the auditors and everybody else all the way through, and I think equally made it very easy for us all to understand and to keep a grip on our finances. So I'd like to get that formally recorded in our minutes, and I'm sure everybody would support that. So any questions on the papers before us? No, everybody's content with those. I think the recommendation is that we note them. I'm just going back to my paper. Yes, we're asked to note the report. So if we're happy to, can we note the report? Agreed.
You had a sort of motion out there, Chair, with regard to Laura. Did members want to sort of record that in the minutes, or?
Oh, I'm sure they would. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
I
please.
asked members if they would support that.
Yes, most definitely, yes.
She's been remarkably patient with us as well. In her
And you, Councillor
And she's
Long.
kept Peter in tow.
Right. Thanks very much indeed. I think that's the end of it. We have got no exempt business, have we, Peter?
No, Chair.
So that brings us to the end of the meeting at 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Thank everybody for your attendance and enjoy the rest of your evening, whatever you're doing. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.